Daniel and I are doing a little bit of a double act today because what we wanted to try and do was to explain how the bits might fit together. So Daniel's talked about the need for community involvement. I'll touch on that a little bit later on. And we believe, as a sort of national supplier to this, that you also need a local facilitator, somebody that's done it before, can talk you through the technical solutions, can probably build it for you and manage it for you if you need that. That's the role of Daniel. So I want to talk about the role of, if you like, the national supplier, which would be us in that case. We are actually doing some work with Daniel in Weardale. We're also building a network with somebody like Daniel in Teesdale, somebody like Daniel in Clackmannanshire, and also in a couple of parts of North Wales. And we have similar discussions with a number of people like Daniel around the country to build similar solutions. So we see ourselves as a national supplier to a regional solution supplier who can then work with communities. So a little bit more about us, if I may, to try and pick up some of the themes of today. And I haven't got any slides on that for the time being. Let me just try and get up the one that we're supposed to have. Daniel? No? Who are they? No? Are we going the wrong way? Hold on. Yes, okay. I'm going to talk about Gamblesby in a minute, which is a way up the road, because we thought we should try and do something local. But before that, I wanted to put us into context a little bit. UK Broadband is the largest holder of commercial spectrum in the UK. Nobody has more spectrum than us. That includes 130 megahertz of contiguous spectrum capable of rolling out 4G services. We have lots of other spectrum as well. What are we going to use this spectrum for? We've just come on the market this year with the spectrum, so we're new. What are we going to use it for? We're going to use it for two things that are relevant to today. One is for providing wireless backhaul. We currently supply wireless backhaul to businesses, small SME businesses, 100 megabit pipes into businesses where they can't get fibre. So think of us as wireless fibre. Next year we'll be able to offer up to a gigabit wirelessly with some new equipment we're bringing onto the market. So where you do have a fibre gap, where you can't get fibre, do think about wireless as being a potential way of crossing that bridge. It didn't used to be before, it is now. The spectrum's available and the equipment is now available to do that. And we're making that available in rural areas. I'll come back to that in a minute. Secondly, we're going to build 4G networks, data networks. We're starting in 2010. And you've heard a little bit of what we're doing. We're also doing a test with the National Health Service to do with e-health, which has been touched on today. This is to do with community workers being able to go out from the hospitals into the community in Glasgow, do what they need to do, access the servers back at the hospitals without having to go backwards and forwards. The beginnings of thinking about how we can use 4G to drive health services into the community. We're also doing tests in Birmingham and boroughs in London around how we can help local authorities to save money. Because one of the ways we're going to be able to build 4G networks, whether they're in the middle of London or in the middle of nowhere, is if we can show how we can save people money, i.e. spend to save schemes, which local authorities can be forced to increasingly look at. A bit about wireless too. If you know nothing about 4G, the only thing that's important to know about it is it's really the first IP wireless technology. So in other words, it's the same as the internet. It's the wireless version of the internet. So the protocols feed straight into the internet. That's why it's so fast. And it really is very fast. We can deliver you very fast wireless mobile broadband today, 4 to 10 megabits. And in due course, we'll be able to deliver a lot more. I'll come on to that later. But make sure that if you're going to go with 4G, that you use licensed spectrum, because otherwise you'll get interference and you won't get the security and the integrity you need. Remember that wireless, I know a lot of people today have spoken to me about, well, we don't think wireless is very reliable. They're right. I've seen a lot of very unreliable wireless. What I'm saying to you is there's a new generation of wireless coming on the market that you should take a look at as part of your solution. There are now 500 plus 4G networks being built around the world. Somebody is getting a really good service off those, and we need to think about that as part of our solution. We're going to build in the cities, we ourselves, starting with London and one other city I can't actually announce, starting next year with the 4G networks. And we want to build in rural areas, but we're only going to be able to do that if you want to build in rural areas and through agents like Daniel. And we packaged up a service we're calling 4G in a box. So that's the 4G spectrum you need, the base stations you need, the devices you need, and the wireless backhaul, whatever it is you need, in a box to somebody like Daniel to help you solve a solution. And we're prepared to do that. Somebody said, would you do this on a revenue share basis and at cost? The answer is yes. We're prepared to put our resources into Cumbria at cost, below cost in many cases, and do some sort of revenue share as the network begins to go. So my pledge, Rory wanted to know who was going to do what by the end of the day. My pledge is you can have all my spectrum in Cumbria. You can have my expertise and my company's advantage of scale. Obviously, we negotiate with the vendors across the whole of the UK. We have national spectrum, so we can deliver scale to local solutions. And we want to work with people like Daniel and people like him around the country and with local communities to help you solve your problems. So that's my hopeful contribution to the solution of today. However, we're not the answer. Nobody is the answer. There's no single technology solution to what you're looking at. If you can get fibre, get it. Absolutely. But if you can't, look at wireless. But more importantly, understand where the world's going. As we use the internet more, we expect the internet to be available to us when we're at home and when we're not at home. Think of the telephone. You know, it used to be the thing we had on a wire at home. Now we can't do without a mobile unless we live where the gentleman who was sitting down there lives, where he obviously manages without one. But most of us don't. That's exactly where our internet is going. So if we think the solution to broadband and non-isolation from the rest of the country is just about wired broadband to the home, we're going to get it wrong. You are going to need wireless broadband as well, because that is what's going to drive the economies in the big cities all over Europe and all over the rest of the world. You've just got to see what's happening in Asia to see what's going to happen in this country. And if we don't worry about the wireless side, whether it be 3G or 4G, as well as the fixed side, we will still isolate the communities you're trying not to isolate. So let's not think it's just a single solution. We've got to think of a total solution into these rural communities. The other thing is that, you know, we're converging TV and the internet. 50% of people in Hong Kong have no television service. They watch it entirely on the internet. That's where the world's going. So if we don't allow for that, we're not going to get where we need to go. So that means if you build anything today, allow it to move forward. So allow you to, for us, for example, if you put WiMAX in today or LTE, make sure you have an upgrade path to LTE, migration to LTE Advanced, and make sure your vendors are tied in to deliver you that. And if they're not, they pay the penalty for having to swap it out in another way later. Be smart about how you do that. We can help you do that, obviously. So now moving on to Gamblesby, let me just... yes, so things to think about. You've heard Daniel's thing about how do you get your act together, but in terms of the practical solutions, what do you need to think about? Well, you need to think about how you engage a community, but more importantly, the community down the road, because the chances are your solution could help their solution. I'll come on to that in a minute. Plan for fixed and wireless broadband, because that is what you're going to need. And also, you're going to need some additional 3G. And make sure that your wireless service is roaming. Because when you're on it, you want to be able to go to the next village or to London and still use the same device. So make sure your wireless service is part of a national tie-up and not just a local solution. You've got a plan for 20 years. We've heard all about that already. You've got to make sure it's upgradable, whatever you put in. I'll talk to the wireless upgrade in a minute.